Alrighty, we are in the third notes of Unit 6, which is pretty much all about slope at this point. So the first set of notes, we introduced the idea of slope. Last time we actually dug deep into slope and understand where it comes from. This time around, we're actually going to be using slope to predict the future. So I think this is a pretty good progression. Before we get started, I want to make sure you take a look at this remember section. I want you to pause and try it. And the reason why is because everything we're doing now depends on you mastering the idea of slope. So if you don't know how to use the slope formula, you got to make sure you know it before you get started. So pause and try, and then check your answers in just a moment. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start by dropping 2 points on this line right here. I'm going to put a point, let's say put a point here, and another point here. I'm going to call this my old point. I'm going to call this one my new point. So my old point is going to be 1, negative 3. And my new point is going to be 3, negative 1. Once I got those two, I'm going to set up the slope formula. It's going to be negative 1 minus negative 3 over 3 minus 1. That's going to be, add positive 3 is going to be 2 over 2. Or simply a slope of 1. For number 2, I just have to determine my old point and my new point. Do the slope formula, so I'm going to do 12 minus 3 over 4 minus 1. It's going to be 9 over 3, or just 3. So if you got that down, fantastic. That's the main mathy formula stuff you're gonna need for today. But if you don't have it, make sure you know it before you get started. Because slope is everything for functions, which again is what we're talking about. Remember, it's a rate of change. Which is how much something increases or decreases over time. So with that in mind, let's predict the future. Let's look at that lawn mowing money we've worked with a few times. So remember, the slope of this was 15. The slope of this was 15. And if you want to make sure I'm right, you can go ahead and try the slope formula to double check me. But I want you to notice something about this. Our slope was 15. If I multiply 1 times 15, I get 15. If I multiply 2 times 15, I get 30. 3 times 15 is 45. 4 times 15 is 60. 5, 75, 6 is 90. We're getting our y value from x in the slope. What we can do is we can multiply x by our slope, 15, to get our y value. And I want to make sure we notice, will this work for any number of weeks? Yeah, it will. Yes. Yes, it will. So try 10 weeks. We're going to do 10 times 15. We'll get 150 bucks after 10 weeks. After 20 weeks, 20 times 15, that's $300. After 52, that's going to be 52 times 15. That's going to equal 780. No matter what number of weeks we use, we always get the right amount of money. That's the power of the slope formula, that's the power of slope. It's extremely powerful. So let's make this easy for ourselves. Instead of trying to remember the slope and do all that stuff every time, we can turn this into a powerful formula. All we need is slope, a place to plug in weeks, which is our x, and a place to show our money. which is y. And what are we actually doing? Well, we're taking our x, we're multiplying it by 15, and taking out a y. In math, we can write this more formally. As y equals 15x. And remember, there's a little multiplication going on between these. X is our input. We plug in our weeks. We plug in our weeks, and we get out money. After multiplying by the slope. So we plug in our weeks, we times the slope, we get out our money. This is a powerful formula. So we can write, this is the equation of a line that represents our lawn mowing money each week. Let's look at a more general case. We can say y equals mx. This is our input, or what we plug in. M is our slope, and y is our output. What we get out. Plug in an x, multiply by the slope, get out a y. And that's it. We have our powerful formula for predicting the future. With the checking understanding, I'd like you to use this y equals mx formula a few more times and write equations for a slope of 4, a slope of -5, for 1/2, and for -2/3. Once you're done, go ahead and flip to the back, and we're going to apply it to graphs. All right, let's flip over. So, on the front, we learned the equation of a line. Y equals mx. It basically takes an input, for example, our weeks in mowing lawns, multiplies it by our slope, and turns it into an output, y, the amount of money we made. When writing the equation, we make sure to replace m with our slope. Okay. Now that we know it, what do we do with it? We can use the equation to make a graph, which allows us to visualize our gains or losses over time. Let's get the slope of this function in this table. It represents the distance a football player can run, y, after a given number of seconds, x. Notice we're plugging in seconds, our input, and getting out distance, our output. Okay, so there's really just two steps. First, we calculate our slope. I'm going to take an old point and a new point. Old and new. Then I'm going to do my slope formula. So it's going to be 63 minus 27. And is going to be 7 minus 3. This is going to be 36 on top. This is going to be 4 on the bottom. This whole thing equals 9. So this is our slope. And then we're going to turn it into a y equals mx equation. So just y equals 9x. Notice that when we plug in an x and get out a y, we can turn it into a point. So if I plug in 1, I get 9. I plug in 2, I get 18. I plug in 3, I get 27. I plug in 5, I get 45. I plug in 10, I get 90. Notice as well that if I plug in 0, I get 0. Right? Because 0 times 9 is just 0. Now that I have all these points, I can plot them. Let's look at this graph on the bottom left. I'm going to go ahead and make my y-axis out of tens. So I'm going to do 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and so on. Once I've done that, I can go ahead and start plotting my points. I'm going to go to 0, 0. I have a point at 0, 0. I have a point at 1 and 9, so just under my 10. 2 and 18. 3 and 27. 5 and 45. And then I'm going to go all the way up to 10 and 90, like so. Then I can connect them all using a ruler and create a line. This line can predict all future values. So if I go over to, let's say, 12, I know that I'm going to have about 100. If I go over to 12 seconds, I know that football player can run about 110 yards. Crazy. This works for any value of x and y too. At 15, I'm going to be close to 140, and so on. Which brings us to our checking understanding. To wrap up today's notes, I'd like you to go ahead and try to create your own line. First, get slope. 2, make it a y equals x, mx. Then 3, plot points, and connect. Get slope, make a y equals x, plot points, and connect. That's all I've got for you today. Let me know if you have any questions, and thank you very much. Take care.